What is the unforgivable sin? Many Christians are afraid that they committed the unforgivable sin, but what actually is it? Let's talk about it. First, I'll tell you what the unforgivable sin is not. The unforgivable sin is not blasphemy. The unforgivable sin is not insulting God or insulting the Holy Spirit, and the unforgivable sin is not attributing the works of God to the devil. These things are not what the Pharisees did in order for Jesus to say that they committed the unforgivable sin. Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is something that's very specific. This is what Jesus says about the unforgivable sin in Mark chapter 3 verses 28 through 30. Truly I say to you, all sins will be forgiven the sons and daughters of men in whatever blasphemies they commit. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit never has forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin because they were saying he has an unclean spirit. It's important to recognize what Jesus just said there. He said all sins will be forgiven the sons and daughters of men and all blasphemies that they commit except one, which is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is something specific, but what is it? What the Pharisees are actually doing that causes Christ to say that they committed the unforgivable sin is reject him and also reject the continuous work of the Holy Spirit as well. Because at this point for the Pharisees, they have more than enough evidence that Christ is who he says he is and that he's the Messiah, but even still they say to him, you have a demon. And they're seeing things that are obviously from God, and instead of accepting Christ as Messiah and softening and hardening their hearts to the work of the Holy Spirit, instead they persist in saying that Jesus is false. And that is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit, a complete and utter rejection of Christ, and by extension the work of the Holy Spirit who moves to convict the world of sin, righteousness, and judgment. And the reason for why it's an eternal sin is unforgivable is because a person that commits this sin is never going to go to Jesus to receive forgiveness because they refuse to believe in him. Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit is not as simple as just saying certain bad things or mistaking the work of the Holy Spirit for the devil, but it's something that's far more grave. You completely harden your heart and close your ears off to God and to the work of the Holy Spirit. You completely reject Christ. And the reason again for why it's unforgivable is simply because a person that's committing this sin is never going to go to Christ to receive forgiveness in the first place. And I'm going to say this for all the people that are scared of committing the unforgivable sin. Why on God's green earth would God make the unforgivable sin so easy to commit that you could even do it by accident? Do you know how many people that lack discernment and accidentally attribute the works of the Holy Spirit to the devil? And as a human being, I bet you said some terrible things about God before, especially those of you that were previously atheists. Imagine if God condemned you for the rest of your life because of that. That would be insane. God is exceedingly forgiving, gracious, and merciful. And so naturally it makes sense that the only unforgivable sin is a sin where a person refuses to come to God to receive forgiveness in the first place. Another way of defining blasphemy against the Holy Spirit or the unforgivable sin is simply unbelief until death. So I hope that this cleared up for you and brought you some clarity, and you can stop worrying about whether or not you committed the unforgivable sin. If you want more content like this, just go and drop a sub or a follow. And if you want to hear more teachings for you that outside of short form content, I want to recommend you join my Bible classes every single Thursday at 8 o'clock p.m.